Good morning to everyone, and welcome to the Beyond Borders breakfast debate on cross-border commuting. My name is Nicola Brignani, and today I will moderate the discussion. This event is, as you probably know, is the second of a series of events organized by the Border Focal Point Network of DG REGIO. Last event, a couple of months ago, focused on cross-border public services, while today we will explore another topics, the cross-border commuting across European Union. In particular, we will concentrate our attention on three different European borders, three different EU areas. We will first move to the Portuguese city of Vila Nova, close to the Spanish border, then to the Pilsen region, Czech Republic, and lastly, we will go to the north in the maritime border between Sweden and Denmark. In this moment, I can see that there are more than 40 participants connected, and I warmly invite all of you to use the question and answer section that you can see on the right column of your screen to raise any question or contribution you may have. Please consider that the last 15 minutes of our event, that as you know, it's a short event, it's a breakfast event, so it's 1.5 hours, will be dedicated to the debate, and naturally at this moment we will be happy to answer, and our participants will be happy to answer to all of your questions. Please note that the platform also allows you to vote to questions that audience asks in the chat in such a way that you can express your interest for certain question, and we will give priority to these questions to be answered by the speakers. Now I immediately move to our host, to Mr. Pascal Moymans, the head of unit for Interreg, cross-border cooperation, internal borders in DG REGIO. And Pascal will present some key figures related to the cross-border mobility. Good morning, Pascal. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Nicola, and good morning, everybody, and good to see you between brackets all again during this breakfast event, the second breakfast event. And indeed, Nicola, you asked me to give already some data and figures. And let me start by talking about this. When we speak about frontier workers, how many people actually are working as frontier workers in the European Union? It's a bit less than 2 million people. It's 1.85 million people within the European Union, and they represent a bit less than 1%, 0.7% of the total employed within the European Union. But when you look at the border areas, when you zoom a bit more on the border areas, then of course this number is much more significant and much higher, especially where there are large differences between employment rates and unemployment rates on both sides of the border. According to the last report on intra-EU mobility, out of those 1.85 million frontier workers, 20% came from France, 11% from Germany, also 11% from Poland, and most of them work in Germany, 27%, 22% in Switzerland, a non-EU member state, and 10% in Luxembourg and 9% in Austria. So those countries are the most important recipients of frontier workers. We believe that such mobility of workers across the borders has a certain number of benefits, and I'll just name a few of them. But first of all, especially when you have differences in unemployment rates on both sides of the border, it can lead to less unemployment, especially for those people working, going to work on the other side of the border where there are more employment opportunities. Secondly, of course, it also brings more prosperity, especially especially for those regions which receive the enterprise which receive the frontier workers, and it will lead to more productivity and prosperity. And last but not least, and especially of course important from our point of view from regional policy, it leads to less disparities between regions and therefore also to more cohesion. So it leads to the result that people can stay more in their region and are not forced to migrate away to job opportunities further away, which at the end of the day is good for themselves if they want to stay in the region. And secondly, it's also good for the region. It leads to tax increase, it leads to people more spending the money within the region, and it also leads to keeping the expertise and the skills within the region. So frontier workers is clearly a different phenomenon than migration. When migration, people move away, and with the result also that very often what we see in some regions can lead to regions losing population, leading to a brain drain, which at the end of the day is not good for the development of those regions themselves, but also for the EU perspective for cohesion. It's not a good development. So we have an internal market, we have a regulatory and legislative framework in place also to protect cross-border workers. But when we look at the daily reality and also the stories which we received, then it's not always as simple as it might look like to be a frontier workers. In principle, you should have the same opportunities and possibilities as somebody who commutes every day from a suburb to a large city, but daily reality is not as simple as that. We still see there's still issues with the recognition of qualifications. We saw this, for example, also now during the Corona crisis with health workers, despite the European qualifications framework. It's not always that easy to find about the possibilities about job opportunities, despite initiatives like EURES network. Sigrid, my colleague from DG Employment, will speak about this a bit more later on. But it's not always that easy to find out what exactly are the job opportunities on the other side of the border. There's not always clarity about the applicable tax regimes, access to social security. It's all regulated, but where to find the information and how to get access to it. And also a bit more new phenomenon, again, because of the COVID crisis, is teleworking. Because of teleworking, new problems pop up linked to the applicable legislation, because workers are very often covered by the social security in the country of employment. But when you work now most of the time in your country of residence, it might also have lead to some unclear situations. And finally, also when we look at practical examples of access to schools or kindergarten for children of frontier workers, they normally have access in the country of residence, but in the country of employment, we also see that very often problems might pop up. We've been working within the Commission on many different initiatives to facilitate, to help, to inform cross-border workers. We have cross-border info points, we have the EURES network, we have initiatives to help colleagues with reducing legal and administrative obstacles. We want to obtain more and better data on the phenomenon of cross-border workers that to get a better understanding of this. We've issued also guidelines for cross-border workers following the COVID crisis, so that at least health workers were allowed to cross the border on a daily basis. And we also try to ensure, at least from our unit here, to see that the cross-border dimension is always taken into account also in the design of all policies and EU initiatives. But still, there's still more scope for work and actions to be done. So what we would like to achieve is actually that the cross-border region is seen as one functional area, one functional region, as one labor market, where when it comes to education, when it comes to skills and competences, to employment and access to social security. And therefore, we think that cross-border workers should have the same rights as those who do not cross the border daily for work, and should also therefore have the same access to information. So that maybe as an introduction to set the framework for the debate, and I think it's very interesting to listen to some 3 concrete examples how they have been dealing with the situation across Europe. Thank you very much, Nicola. I give back to you.
Thanks a lot, Pascal. Thanks a lot for your introduction, and I'm sure that you have already touched some of the points that probably we will develop furthermore during the different interventions of the morning. Before giving the floor to Joanna, our first voice from the territory, I kindly ask you, all the participants, to take part to the first poll that you will see displayed on the right column of your screen. So I also ask to the colleague to help me in launching this poll. We are interested in knowing if you consider the cross-border commuting as an enabling factor for the regional local development of your region. You can see the first question. So, how important do you consider cross-border commuting for the development of the region, of your region? It plays a crucial role. It contributes to some extent. It has no effect. I don't know. So please answer to the poll, and then I will present you the result of this first poll later on. So now is the time to introduce our first voice from the territory. I'm very glad to introduce Joanna Bernardo, who is the HR manager of the Brunswick Boat Group. a company which is based in Vila Nova de Cerveira in Portugal. And Joanna will tell us about the experience of a company employing a lot of workers coming from another country, in this case, Spain. The floor is yours.
Okay, good morning to all. So really, as you said, we are located in the northern border between Portugal and Spain. I'm the HR manager for Brunswick, Portugal in Poland. It is an affiliated company, so for you to understand of Brunswick Corporation, that it's an American company, that it's the world leader in recreational boats, so marine engines and also parts and accessories in the marine area. It is one of the longest publicly traded companies in the New York stock exchange market. And we have more than 4,000 employees operating in 24 different countries. In Portugal, we are only manufacturing recreational boats in fiberglass. And we are here since '94, although Brunswick bought this company in 2017. For you to have an idea, we have 700 employees nowadays, and we are planning until the end of the year to build 2,600 boats. Last year, we built 1,800 boats, and we are with the objective for next year to grow and reach 4,000 boats. So it is a major increase. And I'm saying this for you to have an idea also of a region and a specific company, because it will be important for you to understand how the cross-border employees are critical for us. In this context, it's also important to understand that our zone, Vila Nova, is heavily industrialized with several plus 500 employees companies. And our zone in Portugal is considered a full employment region because our unemployment rate is below 5%. Therefore, we and other companies nearby use Spain as a source of recruitment. In our company, 15% roughly of our employees or direct workforce are cross-border employees. That, as said, considering the low number, and as Pascal also said, of potential candidates in Portugal, it is an important pool of valid candidates. So overall, it is a win-win solution for both countries, with a very significant impact, as Pascal already said, also in terms of the economy growth and potential also to have a more global and multicultural workplace. That is also something that is an add value for a company like us, that if we want to be successful and build a better world, we also need to act upon our social responsibility policies and build a world that is inclusive. But as also it is one of the topics of this meeting, there are a couple of concerns and obstacles that we face when we are hiring cross-border employees. And one of the I would say not the top ones, but one of the first ones, because we can act upon it, it's the language barrier, because it can prevent the success of the cross-border worker and lead them to fail in their integration. That is one of the topics. Sorry. Another topic, I tried to hide all the sorry. I'm receiving notes, sorry. Another one is that if we want, and of course we want to everybody to be entitled to equal rights and equal benefits, but another constraint that we face is that some of the benefits that are country related or regional related that are provided are not that inclusive or interesting for the cross-border employees. As for example, some of them that they cannot even use them in their country of origin. Okay. Finally, another area that has a lot of impact for us, and this is more because it can create an impact on the willingness of those cross-border employees to engage with us, is because they have numerous steps, documents, processes that there are all administrative obstacles that need to face when they are being hired or maintaining even, or even to terminate a work agreement. So, and mostly it is lack of awareness of the cross-border employees, for example. And then we talk about this EURES network that is quite interesting, but I think it's not well shown. So the lack of information is critical, and sometimes even the official entities are not sensitized to the cross-border commuters' specificities. So sometimes they fail to deal with these cases, or to even cooperate between countries in these administrative situations. A final note, it is regarding COVID, the COVID pandemic. Until today, we didn't realize that we had physical borders and the impact of it. But to be honest, the challenges are being magnified with COVID. And Brunswick and other companies nearby were significantly affected by the border closure, because the number of candidates, for example, increased during the closure of the borders. Now it's becoming again a little bit higher, but it was a time that they stopped coming to search for a job here. Also, in terms of our current employees, we experience an increase of absenteeism and turnover. We forced them to longer journeys, taking more of their time and even money to commute to work, and that paid a significant impact in them to showing to work. So in my area, I think it's it, and it's time as public representatives and responsibles to do something to better or create better conditions for them. Thank you, Nicola.
Thanks a lot to you, Dana. I think that you have already mentioned some key points and some key difficulties, and you have also stressed how the recent crisis and the ongoing crisis has increased the difficulties that you were already facing. But just a quick question to close your presentation, if you have an idea on how concretely local and the regional administration, what they can do somehow to ease those administrative obstacles, overcome those administrative obstacles that you have mentioned. First, before giving you the floor, I'm very happy that you have mentioned as a first key challenge the language barrier, because sometimes we underestimate the fact that this is still a problem, and I think that probably we have to reflect a bit more. But I want also to ask you something about the second point that you have mentioned, so the administrative obstacles. To understand if there are some examples that you have in mind of concrete things that a local administration could do.
Okay. Let me just say one more thing regarding diversity. For us, is quite critical, and in Brunswick we have more than 25% of our total workforce diverse. We have people coming from Bangladesh, from India, from Brazil. We have people from all around the world, so we want to be inclusive. And although I know that you want to go to the administrative part, let me just say that regarding languages, I think that even we can have a responsibility there as a European Union, and even in the regional companies or representatives, because we can, for example, give some support in terms of languages, support in terms of lessons. For example, us as company, we provide Portuguese lessons to our employees, but it could be a little bit broader. We could have some support from public representatives to do so, and even in cultural awareness, because as you said, and we said also, the differences between nationalities sometimes create tensions in the workplace that could be minored if we work with them to understand that differences. So this is a side note that is also one of the first points for us that could be tackled in a more broader and country-wise way. Regarding also the benefits, and we have a good example of a cooperation between the two nations. We have a bilateral tax agreement that is providing relief in terms of double tax for these cross-border specific workers. So we do have in our region something that is also a very good example of how the two nations can cooperate and create something that will give the cross-border commuters better conditions. But we have other areas that we need both nations also to be attentive to. For example, health insurance, meal allowances that are really regional located, and they cannot use them in their country of origin. So as we have this tax, we could have other areas that the two nations can coordinate. Not sure, Nicola, if it is the total answer that you wanted, but I think so.
More than what I wanted. So thanks a lot. I really like the first point. I find it so that the attention on language or culture, it's very interesting, and I think, Pascal, we can reflect on it also in terms of policy orientation for the future Interreg programs, for example. But maybe we can discuss it later on. Thanks a lot, Joanna. Please stay with us, because I'm sure there will be some questions later on. Now I move to our second participant, second speaker. I'm really glad to introduce Radka Trilkova, which is the head director of the Pilsen Chamber of Commerce. So we move to another European region. We are now in Czech Republic. We are close to the German border, and I'm curious to see and to have the point of view of Radka from the difficulties and the characteristics of the dynamics of the cross-border commuting in your area. So please welcome Radka. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me, please? Because I had to skip the
Perfect.
computer. Is it okay? Thank you. As Nicolas said, I represent the Czech Republic and the Pilsen region, which is the most western region in the Czech Republic. So we have the longest border with Germany, Bavaria, Upper Bavaria, sorry, Lower Bavaria, and Upper Pfalz or Palatino. The Czech Republic joined the European Union in 2004. And after that, still there existed obstacles for Czech workers, for them who wanted to work abroad till 2011, especially Germany or Austrian regions. They were afraid of massive employees wave because some border our regions there was higher unemployment, but in fact it didn't come true. So the pessimistic views didn't come true. Our Czech people didn't go to work abroad in massive wave, because Czechs are not so much willing to move because of work, in fact. But definitely there are advantages to work in Germany, because in Germany there are 3 times higher wages, there are good social rents or retirement fees, especially for Czech people or foreigners who work there more than 7 years. They can receive these fees, and this is very good for this daily commuters or workers there. But from that time, the situation gradually changed, because, as I mentioned, at the first time it wasn't in massive way. Nowadays we've got about 37,000 of workers who daily or weekly go to Germany and work there, especially qualified or skilled workers or employees working at the construction sites, carpenters, electricians, or people working with welding and something like that, social care workers, nurses, doctors. Especially thanks to the good access, because there is a highway between our 2 countries, between Prague and Munich, and this accelerated the commuting, and I think also good or better roads and no problem with commuting. Before COVID pandemic, in our country, we had about 600,000 vacancies, free working positions in the whole Czech Republic. And nowadays in Pilsen we have got about 31,000 free vacancies. I can't say that the people who commute every day that would fulfill this vacancies, but especially some Czech people, because Czech companies, because I represent them, the Czech companies or foreign companies, but working or having the seats in the Pilsen region, so they suffer from the shortage of workers. And the most crucial situation was especially in 2018, when we had the lowest rate of unemployment, even less than in Bavaria. It was something below 2%. So companies were thinking about to move the production or to move the factories somewhere else because of this problem. Nowadays, it's a little bit changed, because we are at the rate 3.6%, which is higher. And although some important steps were done, because new people are moving to the Pilsen region, Czechs from other regions, because we are quite attractive region because of the companies and good quality of life. But although we have 60,000 foreigners working here, some from EU, but also some and many of from the Ukrainian or from non-EU regions. Although the local government settled a Center for Human Resources, which it was good for the local companies, regional companies here. Last year, definitely, I must say that it was difficult for all the companies here, but also for the commuters, because there were really some obstacles and difficulties at the borders, especially with the lockdowns and with testing. But even though nowadays I have the information that upper parts, Bavaria, Germany, so they have the lockdown, so they realize that they need the Czech commuters, Czech workers, and they released these obstacles. So nowadays the commuters can go across the front border and then can work. Definitely, our Czech workers are required and needed in Germany. And definitely, so from the position of the Czech companies or companies here in the Pilsen region, there is a shortage of workers. But on the other hand, we can say that this change or the possibility to work abroad bring more money into the region. The unemployment, which originally was in the border regions quite high, went down. Definitely, it is good for higher level of the people living at the region border areas. And also the Czech workers who work abroad in Germany, so they spend the money here, which is like I can say it is good for the region. So if it's like this, so any questions or?
Thanks a lot. I think it's very interesting because you are bringing on the table a different perspective, let's say a perspective which integrates the perspective we just had from Joanna. So it's basically to have the point of view of, it is like to have the point of view of the Chamber of Commerce situated in the Spanish border where Joanna is working. So it's very interesting. And so if I may sum up, basically what you are saying is that on the one hand, you have somehow at the very beginning suffered from the shortage of workers going on the other side of the border. But now, on the one hand, you are compensating this shortage with workers coming from other parts of your countries and other parts of Europe. and on the other, you are also benefiting from the fact that these persons working abroad are spending their money in your area, so which brings those benefits that somehow also Pascal at the beginning was mentioning in terms of increased territorial cohesion and so on. Just a curiosity, and I'm wondering at which extent you feel that those dynamics that you have described were somehow dynamics that were happening without any role of the public bodies in, let's say, moving or let's say trying to limiting somehow the possible negative effects that at a certain moments you have experienced, or if somehow the local public authorities and even the national authorities helped you in limiting the negative effects of those dynamics in a certain moment, and has helped you in having now the positive situation that you are describing. I don't know if this question is clear, but I'm a bit curious to understand at which extent the public actors played a role or not in guiding those dynamics.
Thank you. I do understand, but maybe I would like to mention one thing also, that we are balancing or leveling the wages here in the Czech Republic and in the Germany, which is also good. But yes, for the national or regional government, I think it's necessary to release some obstacles for foreigners coming or willing to work or live in the Czech Republic from non-EU crisis. We have got some we call about regime Ukrainian, which is like this one. But I think for these perspectives, the support for small and middle-sized enterprises is very important. Also, I would mention that it's necessary to more work with educational system, because we have got we still in the Czech Republic we have the problem that we still have some positions, or students can study the positions which are not required by employees. So, which is I know it's shocking, but they sometimes students study somewhere because they don't like mathematics, so they study some other kinds, I don't know, archaeology, something like that. But in fact they can't find the work in the Czech Republic. So I think it's very important to mention it and to work on that. And also it happens here that they study these easy schools, they receive even university diploma, but they can't find a work, and they go back to the practical school, and this is maybe our hot potato, or how to say. Yeah, so I think to go smoothly, if they are skilled, go to apprentice schools, practical schools, then a secondary school diploma, then university if they want to. So it's better than to move back. I think these are very important steps we must do at the national level, we have got our partner Germany, and we cooperate or talk about that, because they have a total different system of the education, where companies educate or they invest into the students. So to find the balance.
I think it's really interesting, because it's first of all, we have mentioned the linguistic and cultural barriers, and here we are mentioning another interesting point. So the educational system, the matching between the demand and the offer. So it's very, very interesting. Now, I don't see anymore the result of the first poll, but I think to remember from the last overview that there was the overall feeling was that the dynamics, the worker dynamics across the border are significant for the border regions. but maybe later on, if the colleagues can show me the final results, I will comment them. Now I move. I introduce the second poll, and which is the following. Do you think that the pandemic has exacerbated the existing barrier for cross-border commuting? Here you have 3 different options. Yes, and further actions will be needed. No, there was no change. Don't know. We will see later on the results. Now, it's a pleasure for me to introduce our third voice from the territory, Malin Arlestad. She will present us a specific Interreg project, Job Across, which was financed by the, now I try to pronounce it, please correct me, by the Öresund Kattegat Skagerrak program. So we are moving to the maritime border between Sweden and Denmark. And the floor is yours.
Thank you. I don't know, there's supposed to be a PowerPoint in the background. I don't know if it's visible or not. I'm going to do it anyway. As Nicolas said, my name is Malin Arlestad, and I was the project manager for an Interreg project called Jobb på tvärs, or Jobs Across Borders, that took place 2018 till 2020. The project's main purpose was, of course, to increase work commuting in the northern part of the Öresund region, because a coherent labor market will contribute to growth in the area. We're sure of it. Helsingborg in Sweden and Helsingør in Denmark are only 4 kilometers apart, so it's a 20-minute ferry ride. We think it should be natural for individuals to seek work on both sides of the Sound, and for companies to look for the competence that they need in both countries. A common labor market would make things so much better, but we found out that there is actually a big obstacle. And as both Joanne said, and we heard from the Czech Republic, there are many obstacles, but most of them are mental barriers. Oh, I'm just going to zoom in and see where we are. So this is the northern part, Helsingborg in Sweden and Helsingør in Denmark. But the mental barriers, as Joanna mentioned, we also have 2 different languages, and this is something we hear most of the time. Danish in Denmark, Swedish in Sweden, but as much as 75% of all the words are the same, so different, but not that different. We've heard that we don't have any tunnel or a bridge crossing in the northern part. No, we don't, that's true, but the ferry only takes 20 minutes and it leaves every 20 minutes. I mean, it's easy to commute. We have different currencies, true, but government on both sides try to balance the currency differences with lower taxes to make it easier to commute. And as you said before, we validate our educations differently, true, but it's also very easy to apply for an education in the neighboring country. So the mental barriers are a big issue and they are huge. It's so easy to assume that it's very different in the other nation, even more different than it really is, because we know what we have, but we don't know what we get. So through our project, we try to eliminate some of these mental barriers. I'm going to try and tell you a little bit about what we mainly focused on. We gave information to inhabitants how to find jobs on the other side of the border, and businesses to find employees in the neighboring country. We made long-lasting networks across the water to better understand similarities and differences when it comes to work commuting in the area. We arranged something that turned out very well. We arranged work fairs with companies from both countries within a certain field. It shows that it's much easier to take the step across the Sound if you've actually met a person or a company in real life. We also arranged introduction courses about what it's like to work on the other side of the Sound in a specific branch. We told and we filmed success stories about people succeeding in finding a job, or companies finding an employee in the neighboring country. The last, but I think most important thing we did was that we arranged for an information service in our region. They can help people with practical advice. Like Joanne said, there is a lot of administrative work. So they can help people that want to study or work on the other side of the border. They can answer questions about taxes, pension, which union to join, social security, childcare, and other questions you might have. Through our project, we got in contact with more than 6,000 people who got information or participated in our cross-border mobility activities. We also created 6 networks across the Sound that were up and running until COVID hit us. In March of 2020, Denmark closed its borders, and a lot of people who commuted to work were affected. And a lot of people, they actually lost their jobs. But we see now that things slowly are starting up again. And due to COVID, we had to think outside the box. We have even arranged digital work fairs with companies and job seekers from both countries at the same time. The thing is, up here in the northern parts of Öresund region, we want the region to grow. And to accomplish this, we have to do it together. So in the project, we try to lay the foundation, listen to this, for Helsingborg and Helsingør to be one united city with one common labor market. This is something that the politicians are aiming for and that they want to accomplish by 2035. So for you who didn't see the picture in the beginning where it was Shakespeare's castle, you know, where Hamlet took place, that is actually in Helsingør in Denmark. So for us, our statement became, to work in Denmark or work in Sweden, that is the question. Thank you.
So thanks to you. That's very interesting. Malin, I will come back to you with some question later on. As we know that I know that Sigrid has to leave us at 11. So I will move to her. So please. So thanks a lot, Sigrid. Sigrid Kaspar from DG Employment. It was important to have here with us also a representative of the political and technical institution who can bring us additional knowledge and information about the overall picture of the cross-border dynamics and the European dynamics for what concerns cross-border mobility. So we have asked Sigrid to provide us an overview on the EURES cross-border partnership and on the EU network supporting cross-border workers. So the floor is yours, Sigrid, and then I will come back to you, Malin, with some questions.
Thank you so much, Nicola. And I'm also very grateful for that Malin has been speaking before me, because she basically described the whole toolbox of also an EURES cross-border partnership. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Öresund region was at a certain point also a EURES cross-border partnership, I guess, before you joined the Interreg and before you made use of the tool of an Interreg region, or partly perhaps even overlapping. So this shows you also what EURES can do in that sense. EURES as such has basically 2 branches. We have on the first side, actually it's a network to support cross-border mobility, irrespective of whether it is just frontier work or mobility on a longer distance way. And EURES exists since 1994, so we are now heading towards a 30th anniversary. And the cross-border partnerships are a particular specific mobility scheme, because in that we share the belief of DG REGIO and what Pascal has explained earlier on, that we think there is a specific need to support cross-border mobility to make regions grow together. And for the time being, we have 8 active EURES actually receiving support cross-border regions. There are few other regions which have been EURES cross-border regions, but are not actually benefiting from our support. And it is about having integrated networks, organizing job fairs, trying to feature and promote cooperation across the border. And here, of course, I fully agree with everybody who says, but we could do better. And I think this is a great motivation to actually improve and to further step up the efforts. And EURES is often linked to public employment services. And that means they are as good and sometimes also as bad and have the similar weaknesses of a public employment service. So yes, we have to provide this service, and we should try to step up and be better and also improve cooperation across borders. But this is also not going to happen overnight. And when you look at the regions all over Europe, you see that some of the best functioning regions, I would say, are regions which have had time to grow over a long period. And if you, for example, look at La Grande Région, where you have in the center of it, it's Luxembourg, but you have also France, Germany, and partly Belgium. And this is a labor market of 200,000 people commuting across the border every day. This didn't happen in 57. It took years to actually develop. And in that sense, it is something we have to build on with a lot of patience and with a lot of effort on all sides. And here, of course, the Commission can act as a facilitator. We can help the regional authorities to come together and to talk what is our experience in Öresund and how does that relate to the experience in the EURES at the Rhine, at the Netherlands German border. Does that work? Could we adapt something? Could we learn? Could we share a common platform? Yes, but also in line with the regulation 883/2004 and the subsidiarity principle, taxation, social security schemes, which are so difficult to coordinate, are a national responsibility. And this is nothing the European level can just say, okay, and from tomorrow we sort it out for you. This is often the competence of the regions. And we as a European level can try to encourage, we can push, but we sometimes we see the problems, and perhaps also the EURES partners see the problems, but it's difficult to resolve them. And in that sense, I actually think the COVID pandemic had quite a few, in the end and in the longer term, I would hope for very positive impact, because people have recognized the importance of these regions and the importance that the borders are not separating people anymore, but that we have to come together, and that there is a sense of Europeanness, how much we are already relating and relying on our partners across the borders, and how much we are already one Europe. And I think this sort of experience, we should try to keep it and not to just forget it or to push it away with all this this daily struggle, which is of course ongoing, but here to find something which is a bit more uplifting in these difficult times, and a bit more encouraging, and say, yes, actually we have got quite a long way, and there are rules, there are sometimes difficult rules in place, and of course we have to, not everything is good. And when we have talked to our cross-border partnerships, many of them said to us, well, yes, there were cross-border management things ongoing and we had issues and we were not involved. But citizens got more aware of these structures, of these support structures, and also public authorities and political bodies have learned to turn more to EURES partnerships and to say, look, actually, we should use their competence. And in that sense, I'm ready and I'm willing to see some positive elements in the crisis to say, look, there is increased awareness, we have learned about it, and we should go the next step now when we are at the way out from the pandemic. So I think I leave it there, and then we could perhaps discuss a bit further.
Yeah, thanks a lot. What what interests me is the fact that somehow your positive view on the possible medium long-term effects of the current crisis contradicts a bit the negative perception of our participants that in the second poll, according to their view, underlined how the recent crisis made it more difficult to maintain the cross-border dynamics. Probably contradictory is not the right terms, but I think the point of view of the participants maybe is more focused on the short-term effects, while you push us to look to all these dynamics in the long terms. But I'm curious to see also, based on what Malin just described as, at which extent the practices during this last year, EURES actions and more generally networking actions carried out by the EURES network have changed, and in order to overcome the problems determined by the pandemic crisis. I don't know if you have some examples to bring to us on how you have dealt with the impossibility to have a physical dynamics and physical movements across the borders. It is for Sigrid. My question is for you.
For me? Okay,
yeah.
I didn't get that. Sorry. Because you at a certain point, I think you mentioned Malin, and then I was...
Yeah, because Malin mentioned, for example, the digital work fairs as an instrument that they use to overcome the current crisis. I don't know if you have examples of activities that were carried out in the context of EURES to overcome the difficulties.
The first thing is, you have seen, in particular in the West, in I think EUREGIO managed to actually get back to political, to have an influence on political decision makers. Also in Grande Région, you saw that there were joint bodies set up with the administration on both sides, where they really understood, hang on, like this, we are not going, we cannot continue in the same way as we did in the past, and we really have, bluntly speaking, to get the act together, because the slowness and the complication of administrative procedures in the past is not adequate to solve the issues. Now we have to set up a bit more of a speedy process to find compromises and resolve issues. And I could imagine that this in the long term means there is a step forward. And a poll with a questionnaire to the EURES cross-border partnerships indicated clearly that they have been working far more with political decision makers during the pandemic, which suggests to me that they also have got their attention, that there was also a sort of learning process on the side of the political decision makers to say, yes, we have to consult with these people, and that there, in this sense, is a step forward. Also, there is a common understanding that the border authorities on both sides of the border have learned that a better cooperation is really needed. Of course, such need comes along in the first place with some suffering, and people are not, you have to complain to change something. And if you are stuck in the situation of being dissatisfied, of course you look at the bad thing, but there is an element of improvement in this crisis. And none of the participants or none of the partnerships basically suggested or expects that there is a longer lasting negative impact on cross-border mobility because of COVID. It's really more a sense of a suffering because it is no longer possible, and that says we are valuing it. And I think we also have to build on that and to support this sort of sense, and not say this is, yeah, that's a bit the thinking. So yes, there are evolving structures, there is evolving awareness, and there is increased attention, and also sometimes to say, look, if you would have involved the cross-border partnerships in an adequate way from the start, some of the problems which have emerged would not have emerged. So showing the better alternative is part of the story. Does that respond to your...
That answer. Thanks. Thanks a lot. I have a question that I had in my mind, and then I move to the question and answer from the public. To Malin, I was curious before moving to the question from the participants, from the audience. I was curious what was the key factor that allowed you to have this strong political commitment for ensuring the sustainability of the actions that you have described, but also for moving toward this ambitious target that you have mentioned for 2035. So how, I don't know if somehow your experience feeds the reflection that also Sigrid was describing us about the importance of bringing the political actors on board and of achieving a strong commitment from the ground.
This is actually something that was initiated from the politicians from both sides of the Sound. So both mayors, both the mayor in Helsingborg and in Helsingør, they want us to work to get a common labor market. So it was initiated from them, and then it was sort of sipping down through the municipalities. And from there, we decided to see what we can do and to apply for an Interreg project to see if we could get this ongoing. But it's true, you need to have the politicians with you all the way. So hold them by the hand. The more involved they are, the better results you will get.
Okay, many thanks. Now I try to read some of the questions that the audience raised in the question answer chat. I start from, I read it quickly, from a first question from Ricardo Ferreira to Malin. So would you say that COVID-induced border closures affected border regions more acutely than other regions? So Ricardo is asking, sorry?
Definitely.
Yes. So
yes, definitely. I mean, personnel working within, when it came to working in hospitals and things, they were allowed to commute, but everything else was shut down and you were supposed to work from home if possible. But then we had a lot of VAT issues or taxes issues which we had to solve. So this has really caused a lot of problems in our region.
Thanks a lot. Now I have a question, but also maybe a possible statement from Sabine Zilmer to Sigrid. Shouldn't we move to communicating achievements over time? Sometimes it is quite surprising what has been already achieved. So it is like a request for making more in terms of communication and visibility of the results.
I would be stupid to contradict. No, I think it is important to stress how far we have already got. And I think in that sense, the crisis is a big opportunity to also turn to see how much we have achieved. Of course, the dynamic, and that's a bit of human mankind, to say we are always looking at what we have not got and not at what we have achieved already. But yes, there is a permanent communication task, a permanent task of fair assessment of what has been and what is still to be done, and to value both sides equally.
I have another general question. Then I move to the Jean-Louis Val question for Joanna, but I have a general question from Niels Boy for all of you, I think. Often the border area is far away from the capital, and government may have less focus on solving the problems in the border areas. Any good ideas on how to involve governments in cross-border problems? I think this is a very important and very general question, and I don't know if you have, from your experiences, this is for all of you, any hints for Niels?
case, I only feel the difficulty. I'm really located in a very far away from the capital, and the government is not probably paying the attention that we want to have. I think probably Malin has a good example how things worked, and it's where we want to go. But in our case, we have the municipalities that are interested in this. But even with this COVID situation and the borders being closed, they didn't have enough impact to make the government understand how this closure has impact in our businesses and the daily business days here around.
I don't know if somebody wants to integrate what Joanna just said about this question from Niels.
I think Niels might have a point, because when I look at the regions which are probably most closely put together, then this is the area where you have Luxembourg around, which is, of course, the capital of Luxembourg is not far away, although Paris and Berlin might be far away, but there is a lot of from that area. You would have the area of Upper Rhine, where you have, of course, also a very, I think perhaps it's not so much the capital which is decisive, but that it is overall an attractive, well-developed economic region. And for that, you would have, for example, the EURES. Amsterdam as well as Berlin are relatively far away, but the region as such is closely knit together, and it is an industrial region, or a well-developed region in a way. And you also have other regions where I'm not sure the cross-border dimension is equally well developed, and I think there is still some potential for further development, which would, for example, be the region around Vienna and Bratislava, where you might not have so much cross-border commutes in spite of this, the two capitals being extremely close to each other. So yeah, having the capital in the region shows that this is also a very prosperous region, because the capital often is a service center, the place where many services are located, and for that reason it is a prosperous region which attracts many people from abroad. So maybe that is another reason for this phenomenon.
I have Christina Igor from the audience that introduces another possible variable that, in line with what Joanna said at the very beginning, so, but also Malin, the linguistic barrier. So she's wondering whether those regions that are cooperating better are also those regions that share a common language. So if also another variable to be considered, she refers, for example, at the Spanish-French border, where they also have linguistic problems. I don't know if also putting together this economic dimension, the closeness to the capital, and also this third variable could explain differences in terms of cross-border dynamics. What do you think? I don't know if someone wants to.
I would say that I tend to agree also with Matt. It is more a cultural and mindset situation, because, for example, Portugal and Spain have similar languages. For example, we as Portuguese, I grew up in this area. I speak Portuguese and Spanish because as a little child, I saw a lot of Spanish TV. But the other way around doesn't work. And sometimes they feel difficulties listening and understanding the Portuguese. And I think it's more mindset situation, because there are similarities. I think that people tend to impose to themselves a lot of barriers that doesn't help to the other ones that you said, the government and the location, etc. But I think should be and is more a mindset situation. But it is a that we need to tackle either way, although it's a more person related.
I have a question for you, Joanna, from Jean-Louis Valls. He asks you if you have used the EURES network for hiring the Spanish people.
Yeah, we do use it, not in a consistent way, because until this COVID and this pandemic, we were able to recruit from Spain with no difficulty. although I said that we have the administrative difficulties, etc., the unemployment rate from the other side was a little bit higher, so people were turning to Portugal to come to get work. Although as the COVID pandemic started, and also the recuperation or the revigoration of the market in Spain brought the difficulty for people to stick in our plant or in this area. They want to go again to Spain. So we use network, EURES network, but not in a consistent way. And I think that, as Sigrid said, we are as good as our unemployment center in our area. And as we do have a lot, we are a full employment region, I would say there is not much push or not much, sorry, I'm lacking the word, motivation to do even better to get more people working. Did I make myself clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have a general question for Sigrid and Pascal from Ricardo Ferreira. I think that Ricardo has in mind what Malin described us, which is very interesting, and he wonders whether we should build more synergies between EURES, cross-border partnership, and Interreg projects. Also look into the interesting results, for example, that the experience from Malin just offered us.
I think
yes, well,
difficult to say. Yeah.
Please, Sigrid, please go.
I think it is difficult to something firmly on that one, because when synergies means coordination and means often additional. So I would be a bit slower and would really look into the details of the situation. I don't know how you would feel, Pascal.
Well, I think the basis are the cross-border partnerships which have been set up by you and by EURES within DG Employment, and I think that's the basic structures on which we have to work. But if there are some certain spin-offs coming from this type of cooperation, which may be where, let's say, it goes beyond the boundaries or the responsibilities of EURES, or maybe also beyond the financial capacity, then of course Interreg could support and could come in. I think that would be the logic way of thinking. Yeah, I think we could be supportive to what EURES has already built up and where it needs to be further extended.
Time for another question, at least to Radka. Another question always from Ricardo Ferreira, and he is asking you if would you say that initial fears would be mainly due to the lack of awareness, trust on neighboring people. So initial fears that you were describing over cross-border labor dynamics in your region. So still a cultural barrier.
Sorry, I didn't hear everything, but you mean cultural barriers?
Yeah. If the initial fear, if the initial problems you were describing, characterizing your cross-border areas, were due to lack of awareness, trust on neighboring people. So once more, those cultural barriers, mental barriers that also Joanna and Malin were describing.
I wouldn't say that because the thing is that formerly there was originally historically there were no borders. Germans and Czechs, there were always mixed from the 13th century. Even me, I have a German grandmother, so we were totally due to our history, due to the communist regime, there was a real big fence and wall between Western and our countries. But I think that culturally we are very close to Germans. We are even Germans. We are very close. So, but the problem was the language, because as a child, I was forced to speak or to learn Russian and not German, for example, and others. So it's difficult. It's difficult to say, but culturally, I think that we are very close, and I would say that we have a lot of exchanges, like Melen described, between municipalities, between people, a lot of activities. Even though we have initiatives, border area initiatives, which this initiative wants to show the problems of border areas, and they want to attract the attention of the national governments, because regional governments support these initiatives. Even there is a common bureau. It's an initiative of the regions from the Czech Republic, from border Germany, Austria, and it's so-called Donau-Moldau initiative. And we, even the region, supports the money, or put the money into the bureau, because they specify the problems. I would say, like the common labor market, educational, or space for education, space for living.
Thanks a lot. I really thank you all. I think it has been, well, first of all, I thanks a lot to the speakers, because it has been, at least for me, a very interesting morning. What surprises me is that compared to the first meeting, where we focused a lot on administrative barriers and obstacles, this time I think that the key message coming from the debate we had is really the attention we should pay on cultural barriers, mental barriers, on education system, which is, I think, it's a real challenge for the community, in particular for the community of Interreg programs and Interreg stakeholders. So thanks a lot for this. As a final message, then in case I leave the floor to Pascal, if he wants to add something, I invite all the participants and all the speakers to stay updated on the initiatives promoted by the Border Focal Point through a specific platform, which is the Futurium platform, where you can also find weekly information and contents highlighting ways in which obstacles to cross-border cooperation can be reduced. And also invite all of you to take part to the third breakfast event, which will be held in June, and that will be focused on the European Green Deal. So thanks a lot. I don't know, Pascal, if you want to add something.
Well, you said already everything. I just want to introduce you to the next meeting, but you did already. And thanks again, indeed, to all the speakers and for your interesting contributions from the reality, and which I think is very important also for us here in Brussels, to learn from you and how we can integrate this into our work. So thank you very much for your contribution, and hope to see you soon again, and certainly at the next breakfast event.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for inviting us. Have a good day.
Very much. Have a very good day. Bye-bye.